In this episode,
over my belt onto the desk right in front of where she's sitting, and she's like, "Oh my gosh!" And she's totally freaking out. And Gabriel's like, "Oh, this," and he's like, "He pooped," and everybody's like, "Jeremiah pooped," and everybody's running, and I'm sitting there on the desk.
Welcome. You're listening to Paleo Cheese Podcast, episode 38, Stupid Things We've Done, with author James Newman.
Welcome back, everybody. My name is Jeremiah Bannister.
And I'm Chad Lutzke.
And you're listening to Paleo Cheese Podcast, part of the Project Entertainment Network. And Chad, we have a guest today, man. We have a guest and a really fun topic.
Yeah, it is a fun topic. Our guest today is Mr. James Newman, great author. Some of his books that he's written include Midnight Rain, Ugly as Sin, Odd Man Out. He's got a whole list of them. The Wicked. He's written some books with Mark Steensland and Mark Allen Gunnels, and maybe some other Marks that we don't know about. And but yeah, James is a wonderful author, and I've known him for, you know, not like best buds, but, you know, in the circles and talking, and James gave me a great blurb for one of my books a while ago. I've known him for maybe 5 years or something like that, I think. So James, thanks for hanging out with us tonight on Paleo Cheese.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I thought we were best buds, but
Well,
hey,
Yeah.
no, yeah, I really appreciate it, guys.
Yeah.
I have a funny theory, James, and I hope you find the humor in it. You know, you have apologized a couple times to me, and appreciate it. You know, I gave you the blurb for your new book, Ride or Die, which we were going to mention tonight too. Out by Silver Shamrock, just came out like a week ago. And when you turned in your blurbs to the publisher, and you left mine out on accident, and now I was thinking about it, and you apologize profusely, but now I have a theory, and it's, you gave me this awesome, wonderful blurb back in the day when I first put Foster Homes and Flies out, and I slapped that beautiful thing on the cover, and then I got a blurb from Jack Ketchum, and guess whose blurb went on the cover after that? I felt really bad about it, but I was like, Jack Ketchum, and then I was thinking the other day, I was like, this is why James didn't use my blurb. This is payback. He's like,
And
you're
if,
gonna
and,
take.
if, and if you don't think that I would do the same damn thing,
Yeah, I am sure anyone would, but I still use it. It's there in the book, and so yeah, it was something that crossed my mind, and I kind of chuckled, and that
not at all, though.
I know. Yeah, you'd be a fool not to use a blurb from Jack Ketchum, man.
And, you know, it's funny. I apologize for it, you know, but I had told you about it, and you were like, well, you still have time. It's not out yet. You know, they can make changes right up until this date or whatever. And I don't remember exactly what the protocol was there. I'm like a real idiot when it comes to ebooks and stuff. But I had gone back to the publisher, and the you know, Kenneth Kane, the dude that does the layout and editing, and I had made so many changes right up until the last minute. I was like, they actually have it on Amazon now. I can't do that to him again.
I get it, man. I get it. Yeah, you don't want to feel like, I get it.
I don't think I've ever been so second guessing things so late in the game as I was on this one.
Well, it is kind of nerve wracking, just at the end of that process when you're done with the book, and you know, you're like, you've been sitting so close to, you know, you just like, it's too close to even tell if it's good or not. You go through those stages of like, I have this great idea, it's going to be the best thing ever, and then you write it and you're like, yeah, this is cool, and then you go through the first draft and you're like, I don't know, this is kind of probably garbage. Go through the second draft, you're like, you know what, this is good, but something happens as soon as you send it off, it sucks again, you know? You're like, I'm the only one who's seen this, with the exception of maybe, you know, a spouse or something or whatever. And so, yeah. And then you kind of got that nail biting period where you're like, until reviews and stuff start coming in from, it's particularly from people you don't know. Then you wonder, does this suck? It's strange how you can't tell.
Yeah.
But
it's funny to hear you say that about the first draft, because I'm the worst about that. The very first editing phase, I'm usually like, this is garbage. I'm never going to write again. No, I need to like just delete this file off my computer. And then after a day or two, things start to gel, and you're like, this is actually not that bad when you start to see it come together, and you're like, this may be something that I could be proud of.
Yes,
maybe it's getting there. And then
yeah. I did want to mention before we got any further that this is is this episode 38 now, Jeremiah?
Episode 30 a lot, dude. It feels like it. It's kind of weird whenever you say how many episodes we've had. I always think we've had more.
Really? Well, it's because some of them are split into two.
Yeah.
Yeah. Some of them are, we've got like some episodes that are like, over 3 hours long, and we split them up into two.
We couldn't shut up, Chad. We just had to keep going. Yeah.
I don't know about that. Those episodes, we know whose fault those episodes were.
What? Oh, yeah, right. Yeah. I'm throwing in the royal we with it. I'm like, yeah, we couldn't.
Yeah. No.
No.
But I think this is episode. No, maybe it's 37. And anyway, episode 35, I edited, and I just wanted to mention for anybody who listened to it or watched it, particularly listened to it, I absolutely butchered the editing job for that. And there were some clips in there that were, because we had chatted, and then we watched a movie, and then we talked about the movie, and we were going to put some kind of funny reaction stuff, because it was a really bad movie that we watched, Velocipaster. And so we were going to put, just like we did with Birdemic, we're going to put, the kind of like, not blooper reel, but just us laughing at some parts at the end, a 1 or 2 minute thing. And I left some of that stuff in the middle of the episode because I was in such a hurry, because I had this deadline, really pressing deadline for the Tor Nightfire thing. I wanted to submit a book, wasn't even done with the book, let alone a second draft or third. And so I left this like dead air in there. And if you see the video, it just shows us kind of sitting there, and we're watching the movie together, and every once in a while we laugh. But if you listen to the podcast on like Spotify or wherever you get your podcast from, it sounds even more of a wreck. So I couldn't change that. I did change the video one, but my apologies. That is not what our if that was your first episode, then you were definitely not impressed.
They're not listening right now, Chad. They're done. They're like, oh, these guys.
Yeah, we take pride.
They're not even going to hear your apology, dude. I'm sorry to say.
We take pride in some of the editing that we've done. So yeah, man, that was my fault, 100%. And so. I hope you come back if that was your first one, because if it was, you're not coming back. That was my fault. But anyway, I want to mention that. So we had James come on tonight to talk about, he's got a book that, like I mentioned earlier, called Ride or Die. It's a female-centric coming of age about a girl who finds out that her father is having an affair with someone. So she gathers some friends of hers. They're like, and they're like 15 years old, I think, grab some friend of hers and go out during a kind of a slumber party deal, and decide that they're going to do some, kind of vandalism and stuff. They know where this chick lives, that's, the mistress of her dad. So they head over there, and they're going to cause some trouble, egging, spray painting. And once they kind of go a little bit farther with that, and then things turn really dark very quickly. And the rest of the book is, I was talking with James last night, and he mentioned that a reviewer had said that it's like YA to a certain extent, and then it goes off the rails. And that's true. So we thought it would be cool to talk about stupid crap, dangerous crap that we did when we were kids. And I have a list that I'm kind of ashamed to admit to, but I'll talk about some of it tonight, because I was at some point, I think it was the age of 12, I just became a rotten kid for a little while there, and I did stuff that kids normally don't do until they get much older. But yeah, so figured we'd talk about that. And Jeremiah, I mean,
yeah.
Do you want to start with the embarrassment?
With the embarrassment, is there a specific one? What do you have in mind? Like, what are you thinking, man?
I don't know, man. I don't. You mentioned some stuff last night, and I don't know about some of that.
Okay. Well, first of all, I gotta say, I never went through like a phase where I was like root bad, like mean. Yeah. Like even when I was bad, all the moms loved me, right? And so like, and I was still the cuddly teddy bear guy to all the girls at school. They're like, "Oh, I love you, man. You know, you just smoke weed all the time." And so. But I never had that. But I had like embarrassing moments where I did something and it didn't turn out quite as planned. You know, well, I guess one of the most bad boy things. I can start with this. So I did have a bad boy moment. I was at my buddy's birthday party, and in Battle Creek we have the Lakeview Square Mall, and well, we still have it, but it's like dead now. But yeah. When I was younger, it's packed, right, bumping, and they had an arcade there, which kind of dates me and the mall, but it was an arcade, and my buddy, his mom rented it out for his birthday and stuff. And so we were there for hours, man, playing at this arcade. And it was around the time that the Simpsons first came out. Cause like everything was Simpsons toys, Simpsons magnets, Simpsons cup, and you could win prizes and everything. And so I gathered all this stuff throughout the day, man, tons of tickets and everything. Well, I get all these cups and magnets and keychains and a sweater. I had it all. And we got back home and we had this park up the road. And so a bunch of the guys from the neighborhood were all up there. I'm probably, I don't know, 12 maybe. And my buddy, you know, he sits there and he goes, "Hey, man," he's like, "Have you ever sooned anybody?" And I'm like, "What are you talking about, sooned?" I'm like, mooning them? And he's like, "No, sooning." And I'm like, "I don't even know what that is." And he said, "It's where it's sun and moon." He's like, you pull your pants down and you jump up and down and twirl around in a circle. And when a car drives by, and I'm like, no, I've never done that. And they all start daring me to do this. Right. And I'm thinking, I'm young enough that kind of matters, you know? And I'm like, I need to kind of stand up for myself, you know, and do this. So I'm like, "Yeah, guys, watch this, you know?" Mm-hmm. So I go up by the road and I see this car coming, man. I'm like, my heart's racing and everything. I'm all sweaty and I'm in the moment. And I sit there and as it's coming up, man, just drop those draws to the ground. And I'm jumping up and down, twirling in a circle, ding-a-ling-a-ling in it. And this car goes up over a hill, right? And everybody's cracking up. I'm like the king of the world at the moment. I'm like, dude, yeah, I've got him rolling. This is great. And that car goes over the hill and just stops, man, on a dime. The lights in the back, brake lights light up. And I'm like, what? Dude, whoever was driving that car, homeboy popped that bugger in reverse and was, dude, he's pulling up fast. We're like, "Go, run." So we're all running, and there's these woods by the park, and we're going. Guy gets out of the car, starts running. This guy's like really fit, right? So I mean, I'm terrified at this point. I'm like a chubby kid, and I'm trying to get away from this guy, and I'm like, "Get back here," which, for the record, is the dumbest sentence anybody in pursuit can possibly say. I mean, nobody, I don't think, in the history of the world said, you know, that's a compelling argument. I'm going to go back. So we're just running, right? We're out of there. And we all split up because this guy's gaining on us. So we split up all in different directions. I'm hiding behind these, you know, a bunch of logs that somebody had cut for fire in their home, you know. And I'm totally terrified. I mean, I'm real scared this guy's going to bust me. And he's talking to us all creepy and such. And he's like, man, he's like, you know, he goes, "If I find out where you guys are, you better hope I don't find you." And he's screaming and it's echoing in the woods. I mean, it's real scary, man. It's like a horror moment for a second. And he goes, "Wait a second." He's like, "Somebody left all this Simpson stuff." He's like, "I'm taking it. I'm not giving it back. You better come out here." And he's trying to use that to lure us back. And I'm thinking, that's my Simpson stuff, dude. Because I left it all there. I was so scared. He left with everything. I mean, he took everything. I think it was a sweater that was left or something, or a cup. I think it was a cup that I had left. My sweater was gone, my keychain, everything. And it, and I was so bummed out, man. But that was a moment, dude. That was I felt real rebellious in that moment,
It's weird when you're young, and I don't think it's like this with kids nowadays. They'll turn around and shoot you, some of them. But it's weird back in the day when if an adult, it was like running from a cop or whatever. If an adult said, was after you or something, it was such an intense moment, and it was so scary, and it just felt like if I get caught, I'm dead. And, or even like or please don't tell my parents kind of thing, and then you just dreaded that moment of your parents finding out about anything. And kids aren't really like that so much nowadays, and it's just weird to me. Like, what do you think would have happened if he'd have just stopped and then walked back toward that guy? Like, what would he just feel like an idiot? Especially if you said, you're running after me because you saw my 12-year-old penis. Of course, we don't have the smarts to rebuttal anything, witty like that, or put somebody into check like that. But I would love to see moments like that when adults are like, you get back here. Okay. And then you run back there. What is he going to do? Seriously.
Yeah, because you're right.
Yeah.
You're right. Because when we were kids, just the thought of getting in trouble, those 3 words were terrifying.
Yeah.
And what did they even mean? What you're not talking about the consequences. You're just talking about simply getting in trouble.
Yeah. Like fear of the unknown of what's going to happen. Yeah. It's weird, but what do you think it would have done, Jeremiah?
Ask where I live and want to tell my parents. Been like, I think, well, probably, I don't know. I mean, I can only imagine how embarrassing the lecture would be if it was simply about, don't soon people, like the dangers of sooning.
Right. And
right.
At what point do you think that guy would have been like if you would have carried through, you would have been really compliant and you said, I live this is where I live. Here's my address. Here's my name. And he actually kept, going through the steps of like trying to get you in trouble to the point that he's at your house. Do you think at any point that guy would have been like, what the frick am I doing?
Yeah.
Why am I wasting my time?
Why am I doing this? Maybe at the
point?
Moment that he's hearing me get my butt whooped. I mean, like, because really, it was like the wooden spoon that freaked me out. The image and the sounds and the feel of mommy finding out that I dropped my pants to the ground and let home slice see my wiener. As I'm like spinning around in a circle, and that it'd be so outrageous, the entire thing. But I don't think I would have ever thought. Although it probably would have been true that, dude, they would have gotten a good chuckle. Like if my dad got home from work and my mom's like, you won't believe what your son did today. And she would tell him that he'd probably agree I needed a whooping, but he'd probably also say, dude, that's actually pretty funny. Don't do that again. But it was a good laugh at night. I mean, imagining me, woohoo. Cause I mean, just I'm bouncing up and down and twirling around, woo, 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 like this. And it was a ridiculous sight. But I can imagine that as my mom, going in kind of like the issue with like Christmas Story where you hear over the phone, you said the swear word, and you're hearing, no, I didn't do it kind of thing. And you're hearing that happen, that guy, I can't imagine him being like proud. He probably would have been like, really, what I did resulted in this. Like, why did I do this to this little guy? I mean, maybe I could have taught him a lesson or something, but not this, poor fella, but I don't know. I think James is right. Just the fear of getting in trouble, just the concept enough, that was enough.
Yeah. Jeremiah, you did. And I've told you this before, when you were older, you did much older, I believe you did probably the funniest thing I've ever heard anyone doing in my entire life. And when you told me, I lost my mind. And every time I tell the story all the time.
and it wasn't sooning.
It's not sooning.
Actually, it was. It was. Right. It was because Jeremiah, you told me that one time when you were growing, I don't know how old you were. I don't know if you were like 18, 17, 19. I don't know how old you were, but you were older, which made it more funny. And you were at a public restroom. And
oh my God.
You know what I'm talking about?
Yes.
and you pulled your pants down all the way to your ankles, your underwear and your pants, all the way to your ankles, and lifted your shirt up and tucked it under your your chin and peed in the urinal in front of people in the bathroom. And just like some 3-year-old toddler does, because both my boys have. I mean, that's how boys pee when they're like 2-3 years old at a urinal. They pull their pants down as far as they can, and they lift their shirt up and tuck it under their chin. And for a grown man to do that, dude, just for the laugh, is like the funniest thing in the world.
What makes it crazier? It was at what is it, Silverdome? It was at a very large convention, a Christian convention.
Really?
It was for youth. It was a youth convention for youth groups. So there's like tons of people, thousands, dude. And we'd driven like 2.5 hours to get there. And the line, as in all these places, I mean, you have, over 10,000 people at this place or whatever. I mean, you're talking, long lines, everybody standing against the wall, waiting for a urinal to come open and stuff like that. And I just sit there and I told my buddy, I'm like, dude, watch this. And I just walk up because every urinal's taken. I mean, everybody. So I'm in the middle. I got guys on both sides of me. And I just walk right there and just wham right to the floor, pull it up under my chin like this. And I'm going like this. And this dude next to me kind of looks over. He's like, what? Like that? And I just act like it's normal, man. Like it's no thing. And dude, my buddy was laughing so hard. He's like, Jeremiah's he's like, yeah.
I'd have been laughing so hard, dude. I would have been
man.
Tears, my face, my stomach hurting.
I don't even know why I did that. I mean, it was the most random thing in the universe. There was no
I don't know if I find
reason.
I don't know if I find it so funny just because I have 3 kids, 2 of them boys, and I've seen that a million times, peeing like that.
but dude, a 19-year-old kid or whatever, Yeah, being like 19 years old, part of the youth group, but like more as like a leader, in fact. And that was maybe worse. Like I'm like a youth leader. I'm like one of these guys that's like helping out with the youth leaders. So I'm one of the people they kind of go to and stuff to wrangle up the kids and all that. And I'm sitting there just dropping my pants to the floor.
Yeah.
And dude, it was drafty too. It was, it wasn't necessarily the warmest day in the universe, but it was a good time.
Oh, James just dropped out.
Yeah,
and I probably lost his. He'll probably be back in a second. James, I thought maybe you bailed. You're like, these guys are way immature. What am I doing here? I'm out of here.
No, well, that's certainly true, but no, I'm just but I'm having Wi-Fi problems. It keeps dropping in and out. So anytime that happens, I'll just keep trying to get back in.
Okay, yeah, no problem.
Getting a little spotty.
All right. Well, James, there's some of the stuff in your book, the kind of rebellious teenage, vandalism and type, just sneaking out or things like that. Did you draw from like some, just like universal stuff or like personal experience stuff that you did? And is there anything you want to share along those lines?
I was pretty boring. I wasn't really rebellious when I was a kid. Even when I was a teenager, it really didn't start for me, the rebellious streak, until I was out of the house or almost out of the house, as far as, living with my parents. I went through a phase, where I got into some drug use, 18, 19 years old, nothing too heavy, but so I was a pretty late bloomer as far as that rebellious streak. I've done stupid things, but it was less about like being vengeful, like the characters, in the novella, and more about just stupid fun. Like I can remember one night a buddy and I, probably the drunkest I've ever been in my life. His dad made real hillbilly moonshine. And it's basically like drinking battery acid. And just
No.
I'm surprised that I remember it. It may be the only time I ever went out and did the like property damage thing. I remember we got drunk and we went out and we like spray painted some construction equipment that was parked on the side of the road down the mountain from where I was living. And just stupid stuff like that. I don't really have any exciting stories about sooning or anything like that, but just silliness like that for no reason whatsoever, just to go out and do something and think we were, these hotshot criminals doing something so badass, and it was just stupid,
Yeah. Yeah, I was thinking. I think I was talking to my wife recently, or someone, and I'm just amazed at the amount of looking back at my childhood and looking back at today's youth and some of the stuff that they do, and how there are certain areas where I feel so intolerant to what they do. Like if they leave their car stereo running in a driveway for 10 minutes, playing that, I mean, when I was a kid, it was like if we had, like Kill 'Em All, Ride the Lightning playing in the stereo. Now it's like this really, really heavy, bass that rattles everybody's windows and the floor, and it can hurt your ears if you're sensitive to that. And it's just, you can feel it in your whole body. And if somebody's just got their car running and they're inside talking to somebody for 10 or 15 minutes, I find myself really intolerant to a lot of the youthful things today. And it's weird. And I would think back on some of the stupid stuff that I used to do, and the level of, or the lack of self-awareness that young people have is just me in particular, because of the amount of self-awareness that I have now is crazy compared to how the lack of it that I had when I was young. And it's just so weird to think
totally get that.
Yeah, like doing something like I remember a friend me and a friend used to go down the same path on Northeast Capitol, which is a fairly busy street in Battle Creek. There was a church there that had these huge, really nice bushes, and we would, every time we'd walk by it, we'd like yell bush diving. And this was like when I was like 17. We'd yell like bush diving, and we would like pretend we were stage diving off from something, and we'd dive into these bushes, essentially destroying these things. And that kind of stuff, it doesn't occur to me, stuff like someone's tending these, this is for decoration. The more we do this, the more like crap it's going to look. These things have been growing for who knows how many years, and they look great, and here we are snapping all these things inside all these little branches and stuff. We kind of deserve to be impaled at one point if we didn't stop. Never did, but our resilient little bodies, we would just bounce right out of there. But just stuff like that's like, man, what a jerk that I would do, even something simple like that. Just no self-awareness.
Yeah, when you get older and you have to work for a living, you realize the value of things, that like you said, someone has to repair that, or someone has to clean up the damage. And it's not even really a value thing. I mean, it is, we work for a living now and we get it, if it's property damage we're talking about, but it is more just respect for other people. Like, this doesn't just go away. It's kind of like, I'll sort of compare it to where, like, if my 11-year-old makes himself a sandwich and he just leaves a knife with mayo laying in the sink and breadcrumbs on the counter, we're like, we try to like do it in a positive way to where he's sort of empathetic instead of just fussing at him. We're like, who do you think has to clean that up?
Yeah.
You just leave it behind, and someone has to. Are you going to do it for mom and dad after they've worked all day? That's disrespectful.
Yeah.
It doesn't just clean itself up.
Yeah.
I immediately think of Tom Green's Slutmobile. Like, painting on a car as a dad, right, dude. I mean, that's a totally another level, but to break people's stuff, and something that, I mean, the mom on those recordings calling and saying, Tom, it's your mother. It's 8:00. You need to fix this. You need to change this now. Like, this is not cool, and this is not your property, kind of thing, and at the time, I mean, it was all for giggles,
and money and a paycheck.
Yeah, and money and a paycheck, and it's funny because like with some people, like with like Bam Margera and stuff, and others that I can say, I can look and say, maybe the parents benefited a little bit from that, and they seem to play along like Phil. He played along real well with the pranks, and they benefited from it too. So like the mom with the alligator in the kitchen. I mean, I don't know if she even was completely taken off guard by that. You got to kind of wonder, but with Tom Green, with that specific one, I mean, that I think it was a total lack of self-awareness as to like just how extreme that was, and how hurtful it was, and to drive up when his dad is waiting at the bus stop, and to drive up and say, "Dad, aren't you going to drive in your car?" And there's like all those people, and you can see their faces. They're like, "Whoa, this guy," and like that's damage beyond just simply personal property. That's like, the respectability. I mean, you got to think those people, if they didn't know the whole shtick and what was going on with Tom, then, next time they see the dad, they're going to be like, he's the guy with that car, and so that affects that property, of your,
when you got to censor the art that's on the car from TV, it's pretty bad. Yeah, and that was hardcore.
I never really did things to people's property. Like I think I was raised with a pretty decent idea of like, this is your personal property kind of thing. In private property, my parents are really conservative, and so like that's like one of the primary family private property stuff like that, and so that was a really big thing for me growing up. I think the only time, and it wasn't like, it wasn't bad, like it wasn't a big deal, but we were in a car one time, and we were on this long road trip, and we were really hungry. And my buddy Brian, he goes into the gas station. He bought I think it was a Butterfinger or something, like a king size Butterfinger. And then he's like, "Man, I gotta go back in. I forgot something." So he goes in. Well, I take his Butterfinger, and I'm sitting in the back. I reach over and I grab his Butterfinger, and I like break it like in a bunch of different spots, right? But try not to make it too crinkly, the wrapper. And so he's in the passenger side, and he's maybe he was driving, but he's in there, and he's in the front seat. He's opening up, and it's just literally crumbling apart. It's just falling out, and he's trying to get down a little further to get to the part where it's not. Dude, the entire thing is just totally ravaged. He's like, "What's going on?" And it was everywhere, all over his body. And he looks back at me, and I'm just smiling in the back, and he's like, "Bro, I knew it." He's like, "It had to be you." So, but that I think that's the only thing with like people's property. I mean, I think we egged somebody one time, but we knew them. And we didn't use a lot of eggs, because I was actually kind of scared of the whole thing. I was really nervous about it. But I don't think I ever actually did much damage to anybody's property.
I did more than I'm willing to admit on this podcast. I did a lot between the ages of 12 and probably 18. And the first time I egged was funny because I went with we were staying in a tent in my backyard. I think I went with my cousin, and I was so scared that we were going to do this, and so scared that, so paranoid we were going to get caught not being in the tent, not being in the backyard, that when we did egg, and of course it's in the middle of the night, every little sound is like shotgun loud, So when we did egg, I cracked the egg open and threw the yolk and everything onto the house and then ran. It's so stupid. So funny.
I had this weird thing about eggs, I think, because of something that happened to me when I was probably 8 or 9. And I don't know if I kind of feel like there's some weird psychological hang up that I had about eggs. So I never did that when I had the opportunity. So it's like 8 or 9, like I said, it was on a Halloween night. So people were out pranking, of course, and not far from where I sit right now, there's a very curvy road, basically to get from the area where I live to sort of the business district to town. And I'm sure we had probably been out trick or treating or whatever, and we were coming home. We were winding down that road, and it's a very thin. Not only is it curvy, it's also a very thin road that has a drop off, and there are houses down in there. And I'm surprised there's never been an accident. Like, I mean, somebody crosses the yellow line one time, then somebody's probably going to die there, and the car's going to go through the houses that are down. But anyway, we're going around those curves coming home, and someone threw something on the windshield, and it splattered all over. And we found out later that it was something that had obviously been made with eggs. It was in a Ziploc bag. And when my mom turned on the windshield wipers, it's almost like it had been designed to do this. When she turned on the windshield wipers, it made it worse. Yeah. And she's like, on that road of all the places for that to happen. And, we were all terrified. I mean, my mom had to pull off the road and, kind of, compose herself because she was terrified. Mm-hmm. So I've often wondered, like, when I did have that opportunity, I think there's some subconscious thing where I've always remembered that with the eggs and pranking with eggs, and it stuck with me. So I never did it because it was just a traumatic experience.
Yeah, you had the egg empathy.
Yeah,
we did. I think the professional psychological scientific term for it.
Chet. Yeah, I just looked it up.
Yeah, you looked it up. It's scholarly articles.
Yes,
I mentioned the spray paint on the construction equipment. I just remembered an occasion where we did do like toilet paper and shaving cream, which is just sort of stupid. Just not far from where I sit, like the neighborhood right that behind me, because I grew up in my parents' house behind where I live now. And a buddy and I went and toilet papered a couple yards and put shaving cream on air conditioning units and windows and stuff. And here's the thing, though. I was a really stupid kid because we returned to the scene of the crime the next morning to like admire our handiwork, I guess. And we go back in broad daylight. And we're like walking by the property and looking and laughing. And I just remember some guy on the other side of the street, some old man. He didn't really say it in a scary tone, but he didn't have to, because he obviously knew we did it. He just we hear him shout something and we look over and he's like, "Nice work," sarcastically. And we realize, shit, I guess it is obvious that we've returned to the scene of crime and we're laughing about something we did. So we just took off down the road. So the one time that I really did something like that, other than the spray paint thing I mentioned, it was just stupid because we decided to go back and admire it in broad daylight.
Yeah.
So I was a dumb kid.
I don't know, man. I when I was 12, my neighbors who I'd been hanging out with and gotten really close to for a couple years before that, they had older brothers. And we would play Dungeons and Dragons together and stuff. And then like in 82, I was 12 and one of them started drinking beer, and his dad would buy the beer, and he was like 3 years older than him. He was like 15. So we got our hands on essentially what was like a tall boy. And we all had one. And this is my first time ever drinking alcohol, with the exception of like having relatives and stuff. Growing up in the 70s, taking a sip of your uncle's beer or something, or it wasn't a big deal. You weren't going to like be an alcoholic. And it was just something that, kind of like when doctors used to smoke while they're seeing their patients and stuff like that. It's just like, or kids unbuckled and lying in the back seat on where the window is there. Just stupid stuff like that, we didn't have any kind of like, well, they could probably die, or that's probably not very good. So, but this was my first like real drinking experience, and right away something clicked for me. As soon as I started feeling that buzz, that it just felt like I've been missing out on this for the last 12 years. I've died and I'm in heaven right now. And so from that point on, for a while, that's all I really wanted to do was drink. And I couldn't always do it, but every time the opportunity arose, I took advantage of it. And so that summer, my friend's older brother would get, a couple 40. He would get like 3 40s, and we all would have our own 40. That's like what, 3.5 beers or whatever for a 12-year-old kid that, skinny kid. I'm still skinny. It's a lot of beer, enough beer to have a good time and not be puking or anything. And that summer we did so much stupid stuff, and then pot started getting involved, and then I just was pure rebellious at that point. And I had already, before that even happened, before I even started drinking, I already done some stuff like some vandalism just for the heck of it, because like I didn't like a kid in the neighborhood or something. And I did stuff like knocked when they weren't, and this is everything I ever did was in broad daylight. Every stupid thing I did was in broad daylight. We lived out in the country in like this mid to upper class neighborhood. And I remember I went and I did stuff like I broke all of their clothespins that were stuck on their clothesline. And then I knocked over their strategically placed wood pile. And then I took the poodle poop that they had throughout the yard and I smeared it on their windows, and I emptied all over their bird feeders. Just really asshole stuff. And then I did this, and then I started feeling, I think this is like the first time I really did anything kind of hardcore. And then I went and I started feeling this guilt I'd never felt before. And just the idea that my parents didn't know and they just thought I was this good kid, it kind of killed me. And so it stirred up within me so much that I finally was like, Mom, I have to tell you something. I just couldn't deal with it anymore. It was like having this deep, dark secret I couldn't tell anybody. So I told her what I'd done. And she's like, okay, well, she grabbed a Tupperware bowl and filled it with bird feeder or bird seed. She's just like, we're going to go over there and we're going to tell them what you did. We're going to replace their bird seed. And so we did. I went over there. I told them. I gave him this bird seed, which is kind of a weird. It's like, I know I trashed your house. Here's some bird seed. Are we good?
Yeah.
And then my mom took me out to McDonald's, and almost like this reward or something. And then, so when I broke into a house with these friends, and this was before I started drinking too, and I did it. It was like this peer pressure thing. As I said, we lived in like mid to upper class, but there was this one house that was not like that. And we called it the hippie house. And it was just these kind of like white trash dudes with long hair that kept to themselves. Everybody had long hair, beards and stuff, and they just looked like hippies. And every once in a while in the summer, they'd have these big parties where all these dudes would just show up on motorcycles. And they'd have the big bonfire in the back and everything. And their house was also the only house on the whole out there that looked kind of run down and needed a paint job and just wasn't up to par to what everybody else's house was. And when they weren't home, we had heard a story where a friend of ours had broken into there, and because they leave their doors unlocked. So a friend of ours had broken into there, and the dude was sleeping on a couch, and our friend was like, he's creeping through the house and he sees him, and that dude's like, who the hell are you?
Oh, yeah.
Dude bolted. And then, so my friend and his older brother, we snuck around like in these weeds. There's where I live, there's lots of cornfields and just acreage of weeds, and then like a small forest, and then more weeds, and then a cornfield and stuff. So there was a lot of, cool, stealthy places to build forts and whatnot. And we snuck around through these weeds into their backyard, which was also weeds. They didn't take care of their yard at all. They just, except for where they would kind of, sit in their chairs and drink their beer and listen to their Uriah Heep and Black Sabbath and whatever else that they listen to, and sit around and smoke their joints. And we snuck back through there in broad daylight. And the older guy, my friend's older brother, went in the house, and he came back and kind of reported to us. He's like, I just went in there. No one's home. Let's go. And I was like, I'm not going in there. So he took my friend with him, and they went in there, and they came out with this big bottle of what looked like water. And so my friend told, or my friend's older brother told him, it's like, drink this. It's alcohol. Let's get drunk. And so my friend, who was like, I think he was 9 or 10 at the time, he took a swig from it, and kind of stopped breathing and started choking and stuff. We didn't know what moonshine was. I don't know what it was, but my friend's older brother claimed it was rubbing alcohol that he just had him drink. I'm assuming it was probably moonshine. It didn't have a label, and it was in a large, like, glass kind of gallon looking thing. But
that's really dangerous, dude. A big bucket full of liquid. Like, what
dude,
the heck?
Those brothers were just wild.
Wow.
It's amazing that they lived through everything they did. So finally we went into the house all together. I went in there. My heart had never pumped that. I was shaking, and I as soon as I set foot in the house, I just wanted to leave.
Yeah.
And they're like, let's go look over here and let's look over here. And it's like, wow, we're actually in the hippie house. And the hippies were also, because they were so kind of like, they're real ominous. You know, nobody knew them in the whole neighborhood or anything. And they were just like these dudes that, you know, like I said, kept to themselves, but their lifestyle was very different than the rest of the neighborhood. So it was like, wow, these guys are, you know, can't believe we're in the hippie house where the hippies smoke their pot and they do their whatever it is they do in here. They're having their sex with their biker girls and stuff. And so they had a giant, like a really giant poster on their wall of a girl, a naked girl, but it was very, it was almost like a low budget. It was like somebody took a picture of their girlfriend and then all sprawled out and then blew it way up, because it wasn't like it was not very tasteful at all. It was huge. But we ended up taking somebody reached under the couch and pulled out a tray, and there's their little pipe and there's their weed and their, you know, we ended up taking a cassette tape and a dirty magazine, and then this pipe made out of a deer antler. And I told my mom, we never got caught, and I told my mom about that. And it was probably around the same time I did the thing. But long story short, I ended up, because of this summer, I ended up on probation by the time I was 12, and in drug and alcohol rehab by the time I was 16. But I have not, and it makes me sound like like this horrible criminal and everything, because of all the stuff that I did. Yeah. No, and I'm proud to say that I haven't even so much as smoked a joint since I was 18 or 19, and I don't drink. I haven't drank in 10 years, and I drank for a little while, and even before that, I had stopped for another 10 years. So, yeah, that's like, it's weird even thinking about that old Chad in the weird clueless stuff that I did. So, James, when I read your book, I really resonated with not only going out to do this stuff these girls are doing, you know, kind of normal, almost harmless kind of stuff, but then taking it to the next level and feeling that kind of like that sense of urgency and sense of wanting to do this, but also wanting to get the hell out of there and leave. So it reminded me of a lot of the stupid stuff that thank God I didn't have to go through anything that those poor girls went through in your book, Ride or Die, though.
True.
But yeah, I could go on, man, but I don't want anyone to hate me. I mean, it doesn't get worse than that. It's just, there's a lot of that kind of stupid stuff, you know?
And that stuff can get out of control, guys, right? I mean, like, the closest thing I got in where it was actually damage to property and stuff. I wasn't engaged in this, but I knew people who were, and they wanted me to be, but I kind of intuitively knew this is going to go bad. Like, this is not good. You know, we were pranksters and stuff in college, and like the RAs that we had, I went to a small Christian Bible college, and for pastoral ministry, and so like some of the worst human beings go there. It's just true, you know. Like, I mean, like, some of those people, man, the kind of pranks and the kind of wickedness that goes on at these colleges is sometimes pretty bad. But you know, but with us, it was a lot of just ridiculous pranks. You know, they would sneak in our room at night dressed as Batman and Robin and scare us, or they'd put a pop machine in front of our door because we used to have to check in at school. You had a time card and stuff, and so at ours is really strict. And they had, we're like racing in the morning to get ready, and we get to the door and open it up, and there's a huge, very, very heavy pop machine there with another one behind. There was no way we get out. It was definitely dangerous. But we decided silly things to get back at them, like, going to Taco Bell and eating as much as we possibly could until it literally hurt, and then key carding their room and going in and taking turns. We had 3 of us, pooping in their toilet and not flushing it. So there was 3 people with a ridiculous amount of crap.
Who came up with that?
My buddy, the same one. I think probably my cousin, probably the same one. But like, and by the time I was the 3rd one, of course, I mean, everything's like heaped up, like Mount Everest over the water. I mean, it was just putrid. It was terrible. I was puking in the back of my throat. And it was hilarious because you could see through the little peek hole, because the RAs have to keep the door open so that if anybody wants to come talk to them, they have access to the room. And so we're like across the hall peeking out, and they're like, you can tell that they were smelling it and that it was really offensive, the smell and stuff, and really off-putting. And eventually one of them went to the bathroom and opened the door and just paused and just sat there and looked. And then you could almost tell what they were saying, like looking at the other one saying, "Did you do this?" And the person going, "What?" And you can see his face like, "Me?" And then he like walks over, and they both look in there at the same time, and their heads at the same time go like this. And right at us, dude, like right at our room. And I'm like, "Oh no." And so they knew it was us. But it's my cousin. All right. He was involved in this. It's long enough. He left, and I'm ratting him out. He's done. He's toast. So okay. So they decided, because there were these pranksters on another floor, and we kind of were rivals with pranks and stuff. And it got pretty vindictive. It got pretty bad. And at the end of the year, they decided that while everyone was in school, because at the school you had to have your room really clean before you left. So they had to come in, inspect it, make sure it was good, and then you could go and you're leaving, right? So this room, there's like 3 guys per room. One of them was from Hawaii. So he had to get on a plane and stuff. Well, they're in school, and my cousin and some other guys had saved up enough time on the card that they didn't have to be there. So they decided they were going to go, and they were going to go down to another city. It's like, a half an hour away or whatever, and buy a bunch of chickens, like actual chickens, live chickens. And they bought tons of chicken feed and Vaseline and flour and other stuff. And they went into this guy's room. They carded his room. They get in there. They cover every window with Vaseline and then put flour on the Vaseline. They cover all the counters with Vaseline and flour, the mirror, Vaseline inside of the tub. So the whole tub is completely slippery and everything. They take sardines and put it in the coffee maker, right? Oh. So it's like mixed in with the coffee ground. So you wouldn't even know. You just make coffee, and the next day you drink it and it tastes like sardines. And then they put these chickens into the room, and they completely covered the room, the beds, everything with chicken feed. So these chickens, man, are like eating like crazy. There's food everywhere. So they're just eating like crazy and just taking craps left and right. I mean, the whole room reeks. So by the time I'm out of school, I go in, it's, last day for me, I'm all happy, it's done. And I go up to this floor, and I knew they were going to do that, but kind of the rest of the day, you're going about your day and you kind of don't think about it. And I get up to the 5th floor or whatever, and it smells terrible, dude, the whole floor. And I'm like, what's that smell, dude? And I see the dean of students. He goes walking by, and he has this big honking bloody machete in his hand. And I'm like, what is that about? Well, the next day, because it wasn't the last day, there was one more day. Apparently, they called everybody back, and they said, we have to have a student meeting. All the students had to go. My cousin and his buddies, dude, they're already out. They don't have to even be back. So they're like in the car halfway across the country back home, laughing it up. Well, apparently that dude from Hawaii, man, he got to his room and heard, all these noises and stuff. And he walks in, and there's chicken crap everywhere, left and right. And there's Vaseline everywhere. And he has to have that clean before he's able to leave. He's thinking that they're not going to make it. There's no way. I mean, that's just, you can't, that's not right. But he's thinking, I can't even leave until, so he's furious. He decides to take his machete, and he thinks that it's another person. He thinks that another rival guy, prankster dude, did it. So he goes to that guy's room, key cards that guy's room, chops the chicken's head off, like literally just chops it off, puts the head with the beak open and stuff on the counter of the bathroom, and takes the body and shoves it in the toilet. He's furious. I mean, this guy's like out of his mind mad. Well, they go in and they think it's witchcraft. So the dean of men, they're thinking there's like, you know, voodoo type crap going on. Like they think that this is some kind of ritualistic thing. They're not understanding it. Well, because it looks like exactly, man. So they're like, you know, there's witchcraft going on and we need to find out. People are praying real hardcore about it. I'm like, oh my gosh, like, dude, this is bad. And so I think one of the guys ended up getting in trouble, kicked out of school. Like, I think they told him he's not welcome back because they found out one of them.
I can't imagine why.
Yeah, you're not welcome back here, dude. You're gone. You know, but the guy who cut the chicken's head off, you know, he was allowed. They said, well, he just overreacted. I'm like, well, I guess. What do you have a machete for? Like, what? We're in Dallas. What is he carrying this machete for? You know, but the that's the closest thing. But I knew, it was that thing inside of me, right? That Jiminy Cricket that said, I don't think that's a good idea, buddy. And so I dodged that bullet, dude. But I know what you mean about feeling the guilt. And telling the truth, you know, and saying as you know, and especially with my mom, like for some reason, like not so much my dad as much as my mom, like, because I felt like I'd let her down, you know, even though she didn't know. I felt like if she knew that she would be really hurt, because and it was the kind of thing that stings worse than the wooden paddle I talked about earlier.
Yeah, the disappointment.
Dude, that's the exact word. She says, I'm disappointed in you. You betrayed my trust. I think better of you. You are a better person than this. And you didn't just let me down. You let yourself down. And
all that hits hard.
Dude, I'm like,
yep.
Spank me right now. Like that's, I'd rather get the spoon. Okay. Come on. Like I'd rather have that, because then it's like, she's like, look, I'll always love you. I love you with all my heart, but you have to earn my trust again. And so when that spoon came out in, you know, the development of my life and stuff, when that started happening, that tug of conviction, and conscience, you know, my conscience really bearing on me, I felt like that really ramped up, and it helped me. I mean, I've done so much stupid stuff I regret, stuff that's embarrassing, you know, but I avoided a lot of things in part because, not just because I kind of knew it was bad, but because and that I was legitimately afraid. I didn't want to go to jail. I didn't want any of that crap, but also because the family dynamic, you know, and friends, and saying, I don't want to let people down. And I know that in that moment, that if they saw me and they knew what I was doing, they'd be really hurt, and that would hurt worse than a paddle. So,
yep, totally get that.
I think James is hiding all the real dark stuff like that right there, and he just doesn't want to. He just doesn't want to show his cards.
Yeah,
I was just boring, man. I was a pretty good kid. I racked my brain, you know, when you told me what the topic of the show would be. Oh, that's awesome. And then as it's gotten closer, I'm going to be like, oh my God, these guys are going to be so disappointed. Hey, disappointed. And because I really don't have anything. I mean, the stuff that I did was not vandalism, not even really rebellion, just usually, you know, if I did something, it was because my parents told me not to do it. So I did it, and it was just to see what would happen. Like, I remember one time, I was very young, like maybe 9, and my parents had just gotten an underground, like, fuel tank for heating. Mm-hmm. And for whatever reason, they told my sister and I, well, obviously, you know the reason, but they thought it was wise to tell us at that age, don't ever put anything down in there, no matter what you do. So the very first thing we do when we get outside is we plop down on the ground and we open up the cap, and we're just like, through our hands, we're just putting sand down in there, which is probably one of the worst things we could possibly have done. And I don't really know why. what will happen? Why are they telling us, stressing to not do this so much? But that's what made us do it.
Yeah.
And I can still remember very vividly sifting and then like looking over my shoulder and seeing my mom looking out the window.
Ooh.
And suddenly you can imagine just the sand stop sifting through my fingers. And needless to say, I don't know that it was a spoon, but we got the equivalent.
Yeah.
Because I mean, that
Yeah.
would have been, probably at that time, thousands of dollars, depending on, what it did. So my stories are just stuff like that, just stupid little things, I can remember it's not an exciting story, but I was always crazy about girls. Like I never went through that phase of, oh, girls are yucky. They'll give you cooties.
Yeah.
I can remember a very similar incident where I was in second grade. The first girlfriend I ever had, she was going to be my assistant in the talent show. I was a magician. Thought I was going to be a famous magician one day. I remember she came over to the house and we were supposed to be like practicing our routine. And we were actually like, now this was second grade. We were actually like sitting up in my treehouse kissing. And I remember like in my mind, almost like a movie, it's almost like they had used the same footage over again. Because I remember looking over my shoulder and seeing my mom looking out the window. And I didn't get in trouble for that. But in a way, that was my form of being rebellious and doing something I wasn't really supposed to be doing. We were just kissing,
That's a pretty awesome way in second grade to be getting in trouble, though. I mean, that's,
right.
I wear that on my sleeve, man.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah.
So it was always.
I know what you mean by that, though. Yeah.
Yeah. Some of my stories are sort of boring, stuff like that. I never went out and I was a good kid. Like I said, I was probably like 18 or 19 before I really started experimenting with drugs and doing really truly rebellious stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Stories about kissing girls is rarely ever boring, man. It's good. You're fine. Yeah.
I think the first time I kissed a girl was in a middle of summer in a doghouse with some girl, and it was we were both I was full of sweat just because we were in this doghouse. And it was kind of one of those things, when you have like a dog or a cat on your lap or your chest and you're super uncomfortable, but you just don't want to move because they're comfortable and they're just in the right position. And that's kind of how this was. We're in this cramped doghouse, but there's no freaking way I'm moving because I think we're going to kiss.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think I was like in first grade or something. And in that sweaty doghouse.
Dude, I'll tell you, man, kind of playing off of what you guys are saying. First time I ever kissed a girl, man, is behind this lucky pot of gold kind of, big old cauldron style thing in the backyard where people put flowers and stuff in it, and so I'm back there and her name was Ryan, I think it was Rian. And she was like the hottest chick, man, in first grade. And so I felt like a real mag daddy, I was big pimp and I felt great. And I was at her birthday party and she's like, yeah, you want to kiss me? Let's go back here. And so we kissed. But I had this rival, dude, this arch nemesis his name was Gabriel. And Gabriel was the kid that was always.
Gabriel's the kid who got all your He-Man toys, right?
It's the same freaking guy, dude.
Yeah.
Yes. The same guy that got all my He-Man toys. So Gabriel has come up before. People are like, oh, that guy. Yeah, man, Gabriel. So Gabriel, I'm already like not cool with this guy. Like he's one of those guys that your parents are like, oh, well, do you want to talk to Gabriel and go hang out? And I'm like, I don't know. Yeah, we're going to call him. We're talking to his mom. We're coming around. No. And so Gabriel was also cool. So not only did he have money, not only did he have more Hot Wheel and He-Man toys than anybody else in the universe, but he also was like attractive. Like he was thin. I think he was Italian, kind of darker skin and stuff. Nice hair, cool clothes, and I'm wearing like corduroys, those really thick, unattractive ones that are like cuffed at the bottom real big. And so,
don't forget his name was Gabriel.
His name is Gabriel.
I mean, come on.
Nobody called him Gabe. He was just Gabriel. And so I was, I'm like, Jeremiah is such a strong name too, but I'm like, Gabriel just takes the cake, man. So I'm like, come on. So Gabriel is hitting on Ryan, right? And I'm thinking that I'm seeing it. And I'm like, I need to run interference. I got to do this, And so to keep this lady my own. So I go and I walk up, man, and he's kind of he's standing next to her desk and she's sitting down at her desk and they're talking and giggling it up and she's all batting her eyes at him and he's looking all kind of like he's trying to be cool and stuff. So I go up and I just walk right in between them and I sit right on the desk, man, just right on the edge of her desk. I'm like, oh, hey, what's up, guys? And I just get myself right in there. And it was doing great until my stomach was like, and it was doing that terrible growling, grumbling noise. And I'm sitting there and everything inside of me knew, I really shouldn't be here. I need to maybe consider the possibility that I need to run to the bathroom like stat. But I thought if I do that, that's going to leave it wide open. The vacuum of my leaving is going to leave open him coming in and swooping in and taking the lady. So I said, if I have to pick, I'm going to squeeze as tight as I can. And I did. I pinched my cheeks as tight as I possibly could, man. I'm sitting there trying to act normal, trying to have a regular conversation, but you can kind of hear it coming out a little bit, where you're kind of like this, and it's kind of grunting a little bit. And then my eyes start watering and I'm like, why is it happening? My mouth is all like this. I totally crap my pants. Just like bad. And it just came up over my belt onto the desk right in front of where she's sitting. And she's like, oh my gosh. And she's totally freaking out. And Gabriel's like, oh, this. And he's like, he pooped. And everybody's like, Jeremiah pooped. And everybody's running. And I'm sitting there on the desk. And I'm totally crying my brains out. I'm like, stop it. And everybody's booking. And it's a big puddle of junk, dude, just right there on the thing. Mrs. Snodgrass, that was her actual name. Miss with a D, in fairness to her. Miss Snodgrass, she picked me up and she's talking to me and I'm like, tell him to stop. She's like, well, you did poop. She's like, do you have any underwear and stuff? And I'm like, no. And so they had to call my parents. My parents had to come in and like, my dad's like, why were you doing that? I'm like, because Gabriel. And he's like, you got to really get over this. Like, it will never matter. Like,
you pushed Ryan right into Gabriel's arms, man.
Forever, dude. It was over.
Yeah,
it's
that's
done.
Terrible.
Thank you guys. I was saying this for moral support, and you guys are like, "Oh yeah, it's bad." Yeah, but it's true. It's true, man. And I was crying. I was really embarrassed to come back. Nobody wanted to play with me for a while. But I mean, it was gross. There's just crap everywhere on her desk, and it wasn't a little bit. It was like a lot, and it was just terrible. And so it was extremely offensive. But I don't know.
Gosh,
I learned some lessons though.
Traumatizing.
I bet she still tells the story. I've wondered, man, if Gabriel, what he's doing nowadays. I don't even remember his last name, but I always wonder,
All of your stories tonight have to do with your pants. Crapping your pants, taking your pants off.
Yeah. I told you Freud would have a heyday with me. Freud would have been like, dude, you've got all sorts of problems here, buddy. Talking about mommy, talking about skins, talking about sun and moon, dropping the drawers in front of people, pooping, trying to retain in the anus, like trying to, he'd be like, you are literally, textbook Freudian nonsense. Oh, it's terrible.
Right, yeah. I don't want to keep James, man. I mean, I do, but I'm not going to because I know he wants to go hang out with his wife and watch some Netflix and whatnot. So
and not poop in front of her.
Yeah.
Hey, I had a little interesting tidbit I thought I would share.
Please do.
Just that you may appreciate as a writer, but there's sort of a tie into my writing life with that first girl I kissed in a way.
Yeah.
She actually, like I said, this was in second grade. Years later, would this have been 10th grade maybe? She didn't go to my school, but her mom was the typing teacher at my school. And no one liked her. She was that mean teacher that, was just terrifying. And I really get that she was, but she sort of remembered me. And even if she hadn't, like, I liked her because that was one of those, the few things that you learn in school that I'm a writer. So, typing class was just of great value to me. I mean, I still type like 100 words a minute.
Yeah.
So it's weird how the first kiss sort of, in a way, there's like that tie-in with my writing life because her mom was my typing teacher. But anyway, just sort of a weird little tidbit of trivia there.
Yeah. And I'll tell you what, if there's anything I walked away from high school being appreciative that I learned, it's typing. Yeah. I don't type 100 words a minute, but I type about 90 plus. And it's helped me with a career in as a medical language specialist too, doing doctor reports for the last 11 years, which I stopped doing last year. But
nice.
Yeah, that's one thing in school that I never would have thought that I would actually use, in my adulthood and really benefit from. But
yeah, I knew I wanted to be a writer, so that it was